Dare to enter Crow's Quill's books, where tales of forgotten realms and fearless souls come alive. Today's journey, Raven's Prophecy. The Elder Trials, chapters 2 to 5, by Mark and James Lindsay. Will you uncover the truth hidden in the shadows? Chapter 2. The village of Greytree was founded over 1,000 years earlier by a giant of a man by the name of Caddoc Thorn, who had become lost during a raiding expedition and stumbled across a stretch of land previously unexplored by any from the southern tribes. Deprived of sustenance and severe exposure, he happened by an area rich in natural resources and game, the center of which grew a single charcoal-gray-colored tree, its trunk thicker than 30 men, and its height nearly a quarter-mile high. Caddoc had never, ever in all his years, seen a more impressive tree. It even seemed to nourish the area around it, with its far-reaching branches covered in thick leaves. Caddoc spent many days replenishing his energy and spirit with what the forest had around him, and when he eventually made it back to civilization, he vowed to return and start a family. Over the years, his humble beginnings would create a village from the very forest that saved his life. Taking the name of the same tree that still stood today, more families and pioneers would cause the population to swell. A community with laws and a moral code, farming and commerce, a hard-working and honest people, gave them a good reputation in other communities. These things were regulated by 3 direct descendants of Caddoc Thorn. They were known as the Thorn Trinity. Their titles were Lord. Faas Vragi was the oldest of the 3, tall and gaunt, with a no-nonsense attitude that made many a young child flee in fright. At the mere sight of him, Faas was responsible for the law and order of the community, a job he took with grave consideration. Lael Forsberg was the largest of the 3, a gregarious and thoughtful individual, who oversaw the farming and trade, a man that many turned to in times of crisis. Lastly, there was Jacko Asolf, the man behind the Grey Watch, the first, last, and only line of defense against foreign invaders. He was a warrior through and through, with little time for words, humor, and other such nonsense, outside of swinging a sword and releasing a bowstring. Of course, the Thorn Trinity came together once a week to discuss things concerning the village. This week, there was only one concern that outweighed everything else: the Elder Trials. The Elder Trials was one of the village's oldest and most revered traditions. Once a year, every child that turned the age of 13 were made to participate in a series of competitions and trials. 13 trials, over 13 days. Each task requires the participants to utilize attributes they need to survive as adults through life: mental, physical, courage, and empathy. It is a rite of passage for the boys and girls in the village to transition into men and women. The winner is the Neophyte with the most overall wins. Their prize is a specialized item from each of the merchants within the village, but most importantly, they are given a choice. After the crowning of the champion, all the other participants are led to a sacred location on the outskirts of the village, known only as the Grove. Master Volin, the All-Seeing, is a powerful sorcerer. Volin takes the children to the Grove and conducts a special ceremony, after which, using his great power to determine each child's future roles within the community, they will be allocated a master and trade from which they will be trained. Only the champion will be exempt from the fickleness of fate. The Elder Trials is an important time for the village. Not only does it give purpose to the young, but each day the trials take place, it allows everyone to come together and bond and cheer for the competitors. As much as the village enjoys the Elder Trials, it is an incredibly taxing week for all involved, hence the need for the Thorn Trinity to come together, days out from the event, to ensure that every trial runs seamlessly on the day. Is everything prepared for the last day celebration? Raga asked, as ever his expression was both dour and stern. Apart from a couple of small hiccups, we're pretty much ready, Forsberg replied. Hiccups? Asolf interjected, his brow narrowed. Relax. Dahl was having a small problem with the cider, but he has promised me that it will be ready on the day, Forsberg said with a smile. That should have been sorted out months ago. You're too lenient, Lyle, Asolf said, which is why I look after the merchants. And you do what you do, Forsberg replied, and it's a good thing, too. One of my northern patrols has found evidence of Skollreaver raiding parties, Asolf said gravely. At the mere mention of the Skollreavers, the other 2 lords froze. Are you serious? Forsberg asked. You know me better than anyone. When have I ever made a joke, especially about something like this? Asulf replied, What evidence did your patrol find? Raga asked. Side-by-side tracks through the forest, as well as slaughtered wolves. Only their pelts taken very indicative of their movements and habits, Asulf said thoughtfully. Forsberg broke into laughter. Footprints, dead wolves. That is nothing you're getting paranoid in your old age, Forsberg chuckled. I hate to side with Lael, but your so-called evidence is pretty thin, Raggy agreed. Asulf frowned. We have known for the past 6 months that Skollreaver raiding parties have hit other villages up the coast. Besides, the men in that patrol are seasoned hunters and trackers. They wouldn't have just mentioned the Reavers unless they were very certain, Asulf insisted. From what you've told us, it still isn't completely certain that what your men are dealing with is Reavers, Forsberg added quickly, clearly wanting to deny the truth of the matter. No, it's not, but we can't just ignore the fact that there is an unknown element within our far borders, Asulf said. What do you suggest we do? Raga asked. We double both the size of the patrols and their frequency, Asulf suggested. Forsberg was visibly relieved. Thank the gods. I thought you were going to suggest that we cancel the Elder trials, Forsberg sighed. Of course not. But it would be foolish to do nothing, Asulf said. I think I speak for the both of us when I say. Whatever you have in place for the village will be more than sufficient, Raga said. This was met with mutual regard. What about the sorcerer? Asulf asked. Raga appeared apprehensive. He's been hard to reach, the Lord of Crime and Punishment answered. I see, Asulf replied, as if this comment explained it all. Chapter 3. The sorcerer known as Volin, the All-Seeing, was a figure of much talk and fear within the community. This was all due to the fact that despite their good-hearted simple ways, they feared the unknown, and they feared the man who lived in that realm, although the man behind the mystique was far removed from that of the being the village saw. Volin lived outside the confines of the rest of the village, preferring the solitude of the forest to the stares and whispers of others. This also allowed him to conduct his magic without worry of causing a panic. There were 5 main types of magic in the known world. The first was mental. This encompassed the ability to move objects with one's mind, talk to, and control animals, the ability to communicate with others, mind to mind, and the ability to determine the truth from others. The second was elemental. This allowed the user to have mastery and control over fire, water, lightning, earth, and the air. The third was arcane, the ability to animate inanimate objects, summoning creatures from other realms, and binding an ability to a person or host. The fourth was dark. This could be sought by either one of birthright, or by one seeking knowledge. Its intent was evil, either by obtaining and or application. The fifth and final type is extremely rare, usually not seen or practiced, and only obtained through birth, possibly 1 or 2 in 1,000 years. This magic was known as the cosmic, and it drew on the other 4 types, and those born of this ability lived in wondrous and turbulent times with a pivotal role in events around them. Volin was something of an oddity. He was both an elemental and mental sorcerer. He had mastery over the former, and the ability to commune with animals from the latter. In his situation, the two worked hand in hand, as he felt a clear affinity with all that was natural, hence his current location. Volin's home was nothing more than a wide roof, with no walls. The forest literally butted up against the wizard's dwelling. Grass and ferns covered the floor within. Spells put in place years ago, preventing the discomfort of weather, rain, and pests. Volin now sat on a crudely cut timber chair, years of use making it smooth and comfortable. He smoked a long twisted wooden pipe that was a gift from an old friend years ago, and read a thick leather tome that was dog-eared but cared for. Every night over the past week, Volin had been forcing himself to let go of the pressures of the day and try to obtain some semblance of inner peace. However, with the onset of the Elder Trials now upon them, once again he had to use his powers to guide another generation of young adults find their destiny, something in which he didn't take lightly. But what really concerned him were the strange dreams that had been plaguing him of late. fire, death, and the laughter of something dark and malevolent. Apart from those three things, the dreams were never alike, subtle differences each time, but the end result was always the same: ripped awake, sweating and screaming. These nightmares were not the result of natural causes, fears, illness, or past regret. They reeked of mysticism, and their cause was unknown, and as a man that considered himself calm, rational, and intelligent, he hated that he had become so crippled by their after-effects. Principally, he had become fearful of rest and sleep. Unable to concentrate, Volin sighed, and placed the book and pipe away, then paced to the far side of his house, an area he used to make potions, balms, and poultices for the villagers. Volin began by picking leaves from certain shrubs that seemed to be growing randomly all around. He then placed these leaves in a stone mortar, and with a matching pestle, ground the leaves into a fine green paste. He then drizzled the contents into a vial containing rainwater. With one finger he made a small circle gesture, and a tiny whirlwind formed within the vial, mixing the ingredients until the water resembled a pale green liquid. Volin snapped his finger, and the whirlwind simply faded away. After briefly inspecting the contents, he downed the lot, one swallow, grimacing at the aftertaste. Almost immediately he felt the soothing effects of the calming potion, a simple but effective remedy against stress and worry. However, it wouldn't help with the root of the problem. It only temporarily alleviated the symptoms. He knew that if he wanted to break the cycle, he would have to speak to the blacksmith. Chapter 4. Life within the village was much the same as any other small rural town or settlement. They had the same scandals, feuds, and romances, the inhabitants preferring and thriving on routine, and usually, if all went well, the people's happiness followed Greytree was no different. People worked, loved, and lived their lives quietly and contentedly. The only difference this week was the knowledge that the Elder Trials was to begin tomorrow. This coincided with it being the first day of winter, which, for a settlement so far north, was the start of tougher times, where people had to pull together and work for the greater good. The Elder Trials exemplified this sentiment, as the children were also about to hit tougher times, both in the following week, and the journey into becoming an adult. What was also unusual was the fact that it corresponded with Astrid's birthday, the young girl turning 13 on the very day of the Elder Trials. Everything that could be possibly organized had been done so. What now remained was the waiting and anticipation, and for most of them, this was pure agony. 13 households, the largest contingent of children in years, now awaited nervously, because in less than 22 hours' time, their children would be coming face to face with their futures. It all depended on how they fared during each challenge. Astrid, however, didn't have time to think. She was way too busy juggling a dozen small tasks her father had laid out before her. From making horseshoes to shaping knives for the Greywatch kitchens, Ulrich watched his daughter work. Her experienced hands, a blur of movement, a mixture of passion, skill, and a strong work ethic. The giant blacksmith couldn't have been prouder. He had purposely made her day frantic and fast. He knew that if the young girl had time to dwell, she would brood. It wasn't that she was scared or apprehensive of her future. It was more the fact that she abhorred the idea of having her life decided for her. Ulrich knew better than anyone that his strong-willed daughter would hate the idea of living the life of a helpless damsel, or even worse, a fretting maid. She had the heart and soul for something greater. Watching Astrid work closely, he failed to notice a single figure drift into the back of the forge, until a hand reached out and touched his shoulder. He barely stopped himself from jumping, until he saw who the hand belonged to. "Volin, you scared the spirits right out of me," Ulrich hissed low, then gave the sorcerer a warm smile. "It's good to see you too, old friend," Volin smiled back, the two men shaking hands. Astrid hadn't noticed the unexpected arrival as she went about her tasks, which was exactly what her father and the sorcerer wanted. They slipped out the back of the shop to talk, away from the eyes and ears of unwanted others. Astrid stared down at the glowing rod of iron ore that rested upon the giant battered anvil. Her father swore had been in their family for generations, and it certainly looked both old and well used. Astrid brought down her hammer, over and over, until the sweat poured from her brow, and her knuckles went white from the exertion, until the rounded rod became flat, and a familiar shape now appeared. Astrid picked up the rough knife with a sturdy pair of tongs. and was just about to place it back into the fire when an overpowering image of danger flashed through her mind. It was dark and oppressive. Since she could remember, Astrid had been prone to such things, and in every case, something bad had happened, or very nearly, and it was only when she had expressed a warning that danger had been averted. Being careful to keep quiet, she crept outside. It was at this point that she caught her father, deep in serious conversation with the sorcerer Valen. Staying close to the shadows, the young girl moved towards them, attempting to hear what the two were talking about. Whatever it was, both men looked stern, and this was definitely the reason behind her foreboding image. She could see them, but their voices were hushed and secretive. What was Valen doing here? Was her father in some kind of trouble? Her mind raced with the possibilities, whatever they were discussing. It was intense, but brief. In the end, they shook hands, and Valen departed. Astrid, too, slipped back into the forge, continuing her work on the hunting knife for Lord Asolf's game warden. She had just reheated the blade when her father re-entered. He was smiling, but it was forced. "Ah, I see that the knife has slowed you down," Ulrich said, not realizing that there were other factors that had slowed production. He moved in behind his daughter and assisted her in moving the blade back to the hearth. "I know I'm just going over things you already know. Even I forget things sometimes. It's important that you maintain the heat of the iron. Keep returning it to the hearth, in between hammering its shape," Ulrich said, as they carried out the task of forging the blade. Astrid loved the way her father took the time to show her how to do things correctly. There was no condescension or frustration, only love and care for both his daughter and his profession. For the rest of the afternoon, they worked together and finished the knife. At the end, Ulrich commented that it was the finest of its type he had ever created. After closing the forge for the night, they arrived home for one of the biggest meals they had ever seen, laid out in splendor before them. You need a hearty meal. The Elder Trials have a way of thinning out the weak from the strong. You will need the sustenance of a good meal and the sleep of a good night's sleep behind you, Druid said. As much as I appreciate the sentiment, I have no way of winning the Elder Trials. I just want my turn at the pool. Valen will see that I'm a born blacksmith. After all, it's in the blood, Astrid said, washing her hands, then joining them at the table. Ulrich and Druid exchanged nervous glances. "Then I can finally learn all the secrets from your black book," Astrid said with a delighted grin. Now, sitting around the table, they held hands as Ulrich led them in prayer to Zain, the king of the gods, the god of the mountains, who sits and watches over them all. As they ate, Ulrich contemplated what might take place over the following days. Chapter 5. Valen awoke with a start, the feeling of being watched overpowering. He sat up and peered around the darkened room, dimly lit with the occasional glow from the scattered phosphorescent plants sprouting up from the ground. It took him several seconds to gain his bearings, and when he did, he was shocked to see a short, stocky figure standing near the foot of his bed, its features masked by the night. "Who are you?" Valen demanded as he jumped up from his bed. "Has it been so long that you wouldn't remember?" the stranger replied. Valen gestured with one hand, and his staff flew to his hand, its jeweled end flaring to light, revealing his mysterious guest. "Miska," Valen hissed in shock. Standing before him was a short man, no more than 3 foot tall, but totally in proportion to his height. The man had a neatly groomed beard and was dressed smartly in a mixed tunic of heavy cloth and leather. His feet were bare, clawed and scaled, like a lizard's. Long, pointed ears curved slightly back, and finally large, intelligent eyes regarded the sorcerer. "Is this a way to treat an old friend?" Miska said with a lopsided grin. "I'd probably be a little more welcoming if I hadn't seen you die 322 years ago," Valen said apprehensively. Astrid stared down at the glowing rod of iron ore that rested upon the giant battered anvil. Her father swore had been in their family for generations, and it certainly looked both old and well used. Astrid brought down her hammer over and over until the sweat poured from her brow, and her knuckles went white from the exertion, until the rounded rod became flat, and a familiar shape now appeared. Astrid picked up the rough knife with a sturdy pair of tongs, and was just about to place it back into the fire when an overpowering image of danger flashed through her mind. It was dark and oppressive. Since she could remember, Astrid had been prone to such things, and in every case, something bad had happened, or very nearly, and it was only when she had expressed a warning that danger had been averted. Being careful to keep quiet, she crept outside. It was at this point that she caught her father, deep in serious conversation with the sorcerer Valen. Staying close to the shadows, the young girl moved towards them, attempting to hear what the two were talking about. Whatever it was, both men looked stern, and this was definitely the reason behind her foreboding image. She could see them, but their voices were hushed and secretive. What was Valen doing here? Was her father in some kind of trouble? Her mind raced with the possibilities, whatever they were discussing. It was intense, but brief. In the end, they shook hands, and Valen departed. Astrid, too, slipped back into the forge, continuing her work on the hunting knife for Lord Asolf's game warden. She had just reheated the blade when her father re-entered. He was smiling, but it was forced. "Ah, I see that the knife has slowed you down," Ulrich said, not realizing that there were other factors that had slowed production. He moved in behind his daughter and assisted her in moving the blade back to the hearth. "I know I'm just going over things you already know. Even I forget things sometimes. It's important that you maintain the heat of the iron. Keep returning it to the hearth, in between hammering its shape," Ulrich said, as they carried out the task of forging the blade. Astrid loved the way her father took the time to show her how to do things correctly. There was no condescension or frustration, only love and care for both his daughter and his profession. For the rest of the afternoon, they worked together and finished the knife. At the end, Ulrich commented that it was the finest of its type he had ever created. After closing the forge for the night, they arrived home for one of the biggest meals they had ever seen, laid out in splendor before them. You need a hearty meal. The Elder Trials have a way of thinning out the weak from the strong. You will need the sustenance of a good meal and the sleep of a good night's sleep behind you, Druid said. As much as I appreciate the sentiment, I have no way of winning the Elder Trials. I just want my turn at the pool. Valen will see that I'm a born blacksmith. After all, it's in the blood, Astrid said, washing her hands, then joining them at the table. Ulrich and Druid exchanged nervous glances. Then I can finally learn all the secrets from your black book, Astrid said with a delighted grin. Now, sitting around the table, they held hands as Ulrich led them in prayer to Zine, the king of the gods, the god of the mountains, who sits and watches over them all. As they ate, Ulrich contemplated what might take place over the following days. Chapter 5. Valen awoke with a start, the feeling of being watched overpowering. He sat up and peered around the darkened room, dimly lit with the occasional glow from the scattered phosphorescent plants sprouting up from the ground. It took him several seconds to gain his bearings, and when he did, he was shocked to see a short, stocky figure standing near the foot of his bed, its features masked by the night. "Who are you?" Valen demanded as he jumped up from his bed. "Has it been so long that you wouldn't remember?" the stranger replied. Valen gestured with one hand, and his staff flew to his hand, its jeweled end flaring to light, revealing his mysterious guest. "Miska," Valen hissed in shock. Standing before him was a short man, no more than 3 foot tall, but totally in proportion to his height. The man had a neatly groomed beard and was dressed smartly in a mixed tunic of heavy cloth and leather. His feet were bare, clawed and scaled, like a lizard's. Long, pointed ears curved slightly back, and finally large, intelligent eyes regarded the sorcerer. "Is this a way to treat an old friend?" Miska said with a lopsided grin. "I'd probably be a little more welcoming if I hadn't seen you die 322 years ago, Valen said apprehensively. "Actually, it was 26 years ago, but I'm not offended. It was a long time ago," Miska said. "How can this be? How can you still be alive?" Valen queried. Miska pointed to the sorcerer's bed, and when Valen turned, he was shocked to see himself sleeping peacefully on it. "So, this is a dream I should have suspected," Valen said, disappointed. "Yes and no. This is the ethereal. It has many elements of what you would call sleep, or man's subconscious, but I assure you, in its own way, it's as real as the world in which you inhabit," Miska said, and hopped up on a nearby tree stump. Crossing his legs, he motioned for the sorcerer to join him. Volin took one last look at his sleeping form, then reluctantly joined his smaller companion. Miska was now in the process of lighting a pipe, and after taking a couple of deep puffs, he offered it to his old friend, who declined with a confused shake of his head. Miska shrugged, and with a quick blur of his hand the pipe vanished. "Why am I here? And why are you visiting after all this time?" Volin asked. "I would like to say that my visit was one of pleasant reminiscing, but what?" Volin said, his brow narrowing, and his fist clenched hard around his staff. Miska regarded him with sad eyes. "Relax, old friend. I promise you have nothing to worry from me. But the reason that I am here is to pass on a warning, most dire, and I don't have much time to share it," Miska said. "Who is the warning from?" Volin demanded. "I'm sorry, my friend, there are just some things you will never be allowed to know," Miska said. Volin was clearly not happy with this answer, but he knew that pressing his friend would accomplish nothing, and if time was a factor, he simply nodded. "While what I'm about to tell you will have ramifications, for both you and the residents of Greytree, this information really concerns the girl you know as Astrid," Miska said. "I knew there was something very important about that girl," Volin hissed. "Important, you have no idea. At the dawn of existence, there were the 4 elements: earth, wind, fire, and water. They encompassed the world of men and magic. Creatis, the goddess of all animals and beasts, wanted to control each essence, to better care for her dominion. The craftiest of her wards were the Crow Saga and the Raven Grim. She instructed the pair to travel to the Isle of Mysteros, the exact point where north, south, east, and west came together. It is also the birthplace of the 4 elements. Within a cave at the center of the island, a sacred temple built by both servants of light and darkness. Within that temple lay the very essence of the elements. For years, Saga and Grimm scoured the world, constantly searching, both aware that failure was not an option, and that to succeed would receive more prestige from Creatis than any other animal alive. And with that in mind, they braved the searing heat of the 5 deserts and the soulless winters of the forgotten forests, until they found Mysteros venturing into the great cave. They found the 4 elements within the temple. Both birds stared in awe, their beauty making the 2 weep. Both birds became conflicted. They knew that what they were about to attempt was a great sacrilege upon the world, but a vow had been given to their lady. They argued for many days what could become of such treachery. Eventually, the crow, known as Saga, shook his head and stated that he feared the unknown more than his mistress's wrath. He turned and flew away, never looking back. Alone and unsure, Grimm, too, feared the unknown, but the idea of failing Creatis filled the Raven with enough courage to fulfill her mission. She attempted to handle the elements all at once, and when she brought them all together, there was such a tremendous explosion of mystical might that when Grimm awoke, she was adrift in the sky, bathed in the light of a magnificent rainbow. Regaining her wits, she spread her wings, and was shocked to discover they were now the absence of color. Pure white. When Grimm eventually returned to Creatis, the goddess was both angered and filled with sorrow. She informed Grimm that the elements had changed her beyond what could ever be natural, and that there could never be a raven without the absence of color, and in a moment of pity, transformed the bird into that of a mortal woman. Grim white raven, Creatis prophesied that a girl would be born from her lineage. Every 1,000 years, it would bear the mark of the elements, seen easily in her eyes. Pure, it would know not good or evil, but dependent on its environment, would eventually choose one of the 2. "Astrid is this descendant," Miska said. Volin smiled. "This is good news. I know of her adopted parents, Ulrich and Astrid Mace. They are good people. They have raised the girl as their own. She has only ever known love and caring." Volin said, "We are aware of the young girl Astrid, and we know that her spirit is good, but the same cannot be said for her sister, Brenna." Miska said, "Sister?" I do not understand, Volin replied. And neither do we. Over a millennia, there has never been an instance where twins were born. That is, until now, Miska said. Why are you just telling me now? Volin asked. Forces beyond our control have managed to hide this fact from all, until now. Both Astrid and Brenna are of an age where their true power and destiny are about to manifest, Miska said. What about her sister? What about Brenna? Volin asked. She was snatched from the mother immediately after birth. She has been raised by who? Volin pressed. Miska hesitated. The girl has been raised by the Skollreavers, and they are aware of her power, Miska informed Volin, felt an instant chill in his heart. Is there anything we can do? Volin asked. Us? No. You, yes. Astrid needs to be watched over protected. The Skollreavers know of her existence, and the danger she poses to her sister. Even now they search for her. But they don't know where she is. Raiding parties are ever searching. You need to protect her at all costs. Failure will mean 1,000 years of darkness, war, and death, Miska said. I need to start training her immediately, Volin replied. No, she is not yet ready. In time, maybe, but if it is forced upon her too quickly, unnaturally, all will be lost. She will become like her sister, a vessel of darkness, Miska said. Volin frowned, his eyes dark. You're really not making this easy for me, Volin said. We have all been lucky. She has been raised in an environment of love, protected and watched over her love, and knowledge will always tip the balance in the favor of good, Miska said. And what of later? Eventually she will need training in the mystical arts? Volin asked. Trust me, you will know the time when it comes. Miska was interrupted by the changing of the wind. What is it? Volin asked, turning to the forest. He could feel it now, too. They're here, Miska whispered, and before he could explain further, he was gone. Volin wanted answers, but there was no one there to give them. Instead, movement in the tree line gripped his attention. Shapes and figures from his worst nightmares flickered out from the darkness. Jagged teeth, tentacles, blood-red eyes, and leathery wings like a bat. Whatever was in there, it was horrible and numerous. What are you? Volin asked, trying his best to hide his fear. 1,000 voices replied. They spoke as one. We are many, and we serve the one true evil. We can smell your fear. Give us the girl, and you will be spared, the voices taunted. And if I don't? Volin asked. A terrifying laugh from the demonic voices answered him. Endless torment and torture will be your reward, the voices answered. Volin could feel the power of the evil within the forest. The longer he remained here, he knew that his spirit and power was faltering, and if that happened, he would give in and do as they instructed. He looked around for help. What could he do? This wasn't the real world, nor was it the dream world, but something in between. Maybe he thought, and gestured once again. This time a silver dagger that rested on his bedside table flew to his hand. Holding the blade to his wrist, he bared his teeth at the horrors of the forest. They roared their anger as he sliced hard into the flesh of his arm. Pain seared through his mind, and in an instant he awoke, sitting up in his bed, screaming loudly. The sorcerer looked around, half expecting the creatures from the forest to be nearly upon him. Instead, he was greeted only by the night. He was safe. Did that really happen? Was this just a bad dream? Volin whispered. What of Miska and the prophecy he thought? He wasn't sure. A dull ache touched his arm, pulling back his sleeve. He saw a red, raw wound on his forearm, exactly where he had cut it moments earlier. The moment he touched it, he knew that every moment with Miska had been real. The raven's prophecy was true. Volin knew that he wouldn't be able to return to sleep. There was too much work to be done. That seals today's tale in shadows. We hope Raven's prophecy, The Elder Trials, has drawn you deeper into its enigma. Return soon to Crow's Quill's books, where the next chapter awaits. whispering secrets yet untold.